Say it again.
Hey, glory to Jesus Christ. Glory forever. Hey, everybody. It's good to be with you. So, beautiful day here in Hartwell. It is the 12th of December in my world. That's on the secular calendar. If I subtract 13, see this, we have this weird numer system where sometimes it's 30, sometimes it's 31, sometimes it's 28, sometimes it's 29. So I really can't do math. This is my excuse why I can't do math. So, what would that be? November 30th or something on the old calendar. Anyways, that's crazy. That's crazy. Okay, so today we are going to be talking with my good friend, seminarian, subdeacon, John Bob Cummings, who works at Red Oak Recovery. And we're going to talk about the passions and how they feed into despondency and how it also provides so much more temptation for addiction. And, how to be healthy during these holidays, right? Because these holidays are bringing special temptations just with COVID, with distancing, with irregular church, services and stuff. So we're going to talk about that. It's real. It's real. We're going to talk about real stuff. And before we get there, to help us get ready, let's say our Jesus prayer together. Okay, and as usual, we'll do our square breathing, right? And we'll do the square breathing. Breathe in, pause. Breathe out, pause. Right? Okay, let's go. Breathe in slowly. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, pause. Breathe out slowly. Have mercy on me, a sinner. Pause. Breathe in slowly. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, pause. Breathe out slowly. Have mercy on me, a sinner. Pause. Last time together today. Breathe in slowly. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, pause. Breathe out slowly. Have mercy on me, a sinner. Pause. Okay, let's resume our normal breathing, and let's see if I can bring Subdeacon John onto the screen. There he is. Excellent. Hey, glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory forever, Father.
Yeah, so we'd already been talking, right? So we'd already exchanged greetings and stuff. So, how are things there in North Carolina?
Up in Appalachia, things are beautiful. In Western Carolina, it's kind of a cloudy day, although it's probably mid 40s. Out here, it has been pretty cold. We had a little bit of snow the other day, but today it's good. It's going to rain, but it's lovely.
It
It's
is.
lovely
It's
here.
always lovely there in the Appalachian Mountains.
Appalachia, okay. Yes, Father.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's beautiful here today. It's supposed to get up in the 60s. It's just awesome. Love living back in the South. Our brother, Father Gregory Jensen, he's enjoying 5 inches of snow this morning.
I saw that. That's incredible.
You know,
Not here.
you remember the Kinnison thing, it's sand, right? It's snow. It's snow. There are places where that doesn't happen.
I know. It's some every now and then. You're in the mountains, but not a whole lot.
Yeah, choose wisely. No,
Oh, yeah.
I tell you what, Waynesville is just an ideal setting. It's so beautiful with the mountains right there, whatever you want to call them. And is that Blue Ridge that far south, or does that start further north of you?
It's Blue Ridge and Appalachia. So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. This is actually the famous Blue Ridge Parkway kind of runs right by Waynesville.
And you could take it from there all the way up, and then you could get off there in Virginia and drive to our parish in Charlottesville. So
Yep, exactly,
it'd be a long
exactly.
drive. Don't
I've
do
done
it.
it. It's beautiful. Yeah, yeah.
It is beautiful. Yeah, yeah. Oh, man. And one day, my bucket list is to walk the Appalachian Trail. So,
Oh, good.
yeah.
Have you been?
Obviously, if I'm walking the Appalachian Trail, I have to start in Maine. And at some point, I'll be walking the Appalachian Trail. I think somewhere around Virginia.
Right. If you start in Maine, you're actually just walking downhill, right? Because that's the lay of the land. I'm sure you've read A Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson.
It's on the list. I haven't read it.
Okay. It's of course he was in his 40s and decided to walk it, and it's one of the few books that I've read probably 5 times, and I literally laugh out loud at different parts of the book. And usually, if I go on trail,
Yeah.
I'll go on trail for a few days. That'll be my go-to book, and I still just go fall at some of the stuff he says.
Wow. I bet that's on audio. I need to check that out. Checking because
Yeah, suppose
a book like that
the
would be.
movie.
Oh, there's a movie.
Yeah, I didn't see it. It's with Robert Redford and Nick Nolte,
Oh, I saw
and
that.
okay, I think I'm
Eh,
told it's
eh.
not, but the book is hilarious because he jumps from these funny stories into history, but also into science
Yeah.
in Bill Bryson's way. Yeah, it's incredible work of literature.
Yeah, he's a great storyteller. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, good. So, what we're going to talk about today is how tough these holiday seasons are for you. And don't get wrapped around the axle. Some of you may be listening and saying, that priest just used the word holiday. I bet he uses the word Christmas.
Literal.
Right, I know. It's crazy, right? It's crazy. Yeah, so holiday, derived from holy day. Um, Go figure. Yeah, but they're tough, and they're always, you always get articles that come out this time of year saying, hey, watch your friends and stuff because this is a tough time of season for some people. Just moods, there are all these memories, and if you're wired a certain way, it just takes you down into the tank. But it's even harder this year because it's harder for us to keep an eye on each other. We're not doing the sorts of normal routines that build us up. So all a person who's in that frame, all they're going to be able to do is see negative, right? So that's one of the things we're gonna talk about. Yeah. So you kind of watch this, right? This is part of the way that your pastoral eye works, and you also do it as a professional, right?
Yes.
Do you see that kind of cycle? Does it really increase at this time of year?
There's no question, absolutely. And if I can kind of go into detail, I work in the substance abuse industry, and I work for a company called Red Oak Recovery, and Red Oak operates 3 addiction recovery programs, um, one for young adult males, one for young adult females, and one for adolescent males. And what we see this time of year, and I'll step back a little bit. Not only the people who are in treatment, we're seeing this up and down and this flow, this depression, this increase in acting out, the increase in compulsions to use. But the fact that we're getting so many admissions in this time of year means that even before people come into the program, there's obviously stuff going on that's causing an increase of use, increase of acting out, increased family problems, increase in depression and acting out behavior that brings them or their loved ones to the point to where they say you need to go into treatment. You can't control what's happening in your life. So it's interesting. I mean, one would almost think that around the holidays, people would not have once 90-day treatment program, but we see the opposite. We see at the beginning of the holiday season an upsurge in admissions. And I think that's why, because of what's going on this time of year when we're supposed to be happy and enthused and everything you just said, and we're not.
Yeah, that's hard. And then, yeah, it's just, and this year, right? Our sense is, out here, people who don't have their eye on this every day, our sense is that it's worse, right? That there's all of the social tensions that there usually are that create increased temptations, that there's more of it. Is that the case as well? Has there been kind of a secular increase over this COVID year? with
There's
acting out?
no, no question. And of course, I come from the standpoint primarily of substance abuse, mental health, suicide trends, and so on. What we're seeing, especially since COVID, is extreme increases in alcohol use, alcohol sales, drug use, not just prescription drug, but also street drug. I mean, part of my social contacts have their hands on the street, and we know that as far as the illegal drugs, heroin and opioids and so on, those drug uses are out the ceiling. Um, Here in Western Carolina, we live very close to the Cherokee Indian Reservation. The reservation is 25 minutes away, has a severe alcohol and drug problem, and my contacts on the res are saying that the drug use, the overdoses, the deaths are skyrocketing. And as much as my friends there are doing to mitigate that in their own Christianity and their own recovery work, it's not working. Um, so yeah, we're seeing it all around the country.
Yeah, so let's just get all these forces and just you've described some of them, right? We've got the increase in temptations, increase in the sorts of things that lead to acting out and dangerous behavior. And then you've also got on the other side of it, on the kind of the reaction to it, is that institutions that usually handle this thing are finding it hard because their normal operating procedures have been handicapped, right? By, just to stay healthy. And they're moved out of their routines. And some organizations are able to deal with that, pretty fastly, but others aren't, right? And no
Right.
matter what, your capacity and the speed of your reaction is hampered. So it's really a tough place to be if you're struggling with addiction.
Yeah, we also use the metaphor, Father, of the church not being a courtroom for guilty, but a hospital for those who are sick of soul. And I can even use that metaphor uh, by pointing out the reality that like real hospitals are having trouble handling all the stuff that's coming in because of COVID or because of drug overdoses or depression, all these other things that can be taken back down to the COVID situation. Real hospitals are having trouble handling the overflow. And in the same way, what I'm seeing is that the church hospital would likewise have trouble handling it too, because of many churches can't meet or don't meet, or they can't fully meet. They're having to social distance and so on. So instead of the whole congregation being able to come in and love each other and fellowship with one another and commune, we're having to mitigate that through you have to call in because we only have 10 people in church or whatever. So that's happening too in real hospitals, but also in our church hospitals.
Yeah, let me underscore that, right? So what one of the natural things, hopefully, for someone who is struggling to do is to seek out help, right? And yeah, emergency rooms, that's one of the places they kind of deal with that, and they have a routine, right? They know how long people can stay. People know how long they can stay, and they go and they take advantage of that safe place and all that. But now, I, emergency rooms are kind of in a tough spot. It's hard for them to take up that slack. Now, for us as a hospital, we're running a small emergency care center there at Holy Resurrection, right? And here I'm talking metaphorically, right? A natural thing for people to do is, hey, yeah, I remember there was this thing I always felt, that relationship with God through Christ can help me, or maybe they have a fond memory of church from growing up or something. So, you know, go to a church. Their friends might encourage them, right? And they show up. And yeah, if a church is allowed to have 10 people and they're the 11th, what do you do, right? And all of our Christian hospitality is like, yeah, of course you make room for them, duh. But there's so much anxiety and stress and so on. And I know in our community, if we were stuck in that situation, we'd be like wrestling to see who could make space for that person, right?
Yeah.
Now, not because we want to leave church. We love church. That's where our home is. But just so that we can, just allow somebody else to feel that love the way that we like to feel it.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's tough. I mean, we've got, someone who's, you know, struggling with stuff, been coming to checking us out, right? And it is sad that we don't have our full, we don't have our full hug, our full spiritual and community hug out there to give. But there you go, tough times. So
Mhm.
let's talk instead of just generalities. We've set it up, right? But there are people who are in this. You and I are in this, right? We struggle with temptations and things, so we feel it, right? If someone isn't in treatment for their challenges, right? If they're not actively engaged in, recovery, they're vulnerable, right? So let's talk about that vulnerability, right? And I like your suggestion. Let's look at it through the seven major, what do we call them? Passions,
Mhm.
vices. Yeah. So let's start with the biggie, right? I'm an expert. I've been practicing this one until, man, I'm a virtuoso on pride. So let's talk about that with someone who's an addict, someone who's a person who's struggling with addiction, right? How does
Mhm.
pride work into this and drive them into despondency in that place where just some kind of get out of here, even if it's
Sure.
something they know it's going to destroy them? Why that looks good.
Okay. Kind of go into something, kind of set the stage for that. All right. What I really want to do, and again, as someone coming from the Protestant background, which I did before I became a convert to Orthodoxy, and found this beautiful, wonderful pearl of great price. But I know as a Protestant, sin was viewed as something you're doing wrong and something that you got to stop doing. Don't do that anymore. All right, because you're bad if you sin. And then so sin was not only sin, but also admitting to sin or dealing with sin became a shame producing exercise. And then I come into the church, and through understanding and good teaching and the love of some priests, I know that in the church we view sin. Like I said earlier, the church isn't a courtroom for the guilty. The church is a hospital for those who are sick, and we view sin, harmatia or harmatia. We view sin as almost like the symptoms of a disease. And if I said I have COVID, or listen, I have some of the symptoms of COVID. I mean, I can't smell, I'm coughing, I have a fever, and so on. Then nobody would say, "Well, you better get right, boy," or don't do that, don't have that fever, Bob. What I would hear from my friends and my loved ones and my doctor is, well, those are serious symptoms. Let's look at those symptoms and let's work on the cure for the diseases causing the symptoms. I say that to say this: that anyone who's listening who maybe has the old view of sin, when we talk about the seven passions, we don't talk about them as you better quit doing that. You're bad for having those. We talk about them as those are symptoms of this disease. So let's fully admit to them. Let's fully look at them and deal with them, and then take them to the doctor, who is your priest, or take them to the hospital, which is the church, and then let's look at the cure. Okay, um, so yeah, if it's okay, can I carry on from there? All right. So you were talking about pride. As a man in long-term recovery, by God's grace, I've not felt the need to use alcohol or mood-altering chemicals for about 35 years. So pride, um, we talk about in the recovery world, and of course in the Christian world, as a primary sin. I know that in recovery, the first step of Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous is we admitted we were powerless over our addiction, their lives to become unmanageable. And my pride keeps me from saying that I'm powerless, all right? And I'll grab hold of anything to keep from actually feeling that powerlessness or admitting to that powerlessness. We admitted we were powerless over our addiction, our life would become unmanageable. And then further on in recovery, if you read the 12 steps, every step is we, which means recovery happens in a group. Um, and to work my recovery, for instance, step 4, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. All right. And then step 5, I have to admit to God and to another human being the exact nature of my wrongs. So I have to write out my sin, the things that keep me sick. This sounds like confession, like a lifelong confession of the Orthodox Church, of course. So then later on, we continue to take personal inventory. When we're wrong, promptly admit it, which means I've got to be talking about my need, the things I'm doing wrong, and the symptoms of my disease. So if my pride keeps me from very quickly and actively admitting, oh crap, I screwed up. Not just I drank or I used, but I let anger get the best of me, or I lied to somebody. If pride keeps me from admitting that symptom of the disease, and then going to the doctor or the hospital, of course I'm speaking metaphorically, then I'm not going to get the cure. I'm not going to get the medicine I need. So pride keeps me sick. Pride keeps me from entering into the serenity, either in my recovery or in my spirituality.
Right. Yeah. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. You should go to seminary.
I know a really good one. All right.
Yeah. No, that's so right. Yeah. And pride, and you said you hit it from all the different dimensions. Yeah. And one of the ways is, the despondency. I, it's that double whammy of I should be strong enough, and I'm not, right? But I'm not going to admit it. So I'm gonna, and so once you start going into that despondency, then reaching, you're a drowning man reaching out for something, just
Yeah.
and if you've ever, hopefully, I don't know if you've ever been in that situation, really, not metaphorically, but really, where you're actually, just reaching out for anything because the panic has set in. Right? Lots of things that aren't rational will seem not just reasonable, but the only way to save yourself. Right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Ah, Lord have mercy. So humility is the answer, right? So just tell people to be humble.
Yeah. Humility. Yeah. Yes. Humility is the answer for me, but at the same time, I need my priest, my church, the people who love me, to, when I admit that I screwed up, I have to say, yeah, right on. Been there, done that, got the T-shirt. I still love you. All right. I can be humble. I can be humble, but if the people who I'm being humble toward, especially my church family, if they don't see my pain and my hurt and embrace me, then my humility does me no good. I'm going to end up not being humble. I'm going to end up hiding again. So yeah, I say that to say this: that the humility is a two-edged coin. I need to be humble, but those people in my life need to embrace me when I'm humble and when I admit, yeah, I need help. I'm
Right.
not doing so well.
Yeah, it's not reasonable to expect superhuman humility from someone who is the patient, right? And that's what that requires. Is if I'm being humble, but other people aren't valuing me, then it takes an extra level of humility, right? Whereas someone who shows up who is in the midst of a struggle, maybe they do have that moment of clarity where they're humble enough to seek help, right? We have to just, and it's not a thing where we have to go through a flow chart, right? Our natural response should be offering of unreserved love and support. Always. That's a good, there's no downside to that, right?
Yeah.
So we, that's, and one of the things that I love, I've already put in a plug for Waynesville, right, as a community, because it's so beautiful, but a plug for the kind of culture that we're cultivating there in Waynesville is where that is the natural response, right?
Yeah.
And you know, we're just going to love on you in the Orthodox manner. So, but I was joking. I hope you realize that. Just telling someone to be humble, that's like telling somebody not to drink.
Right,
It's
exactly.
they need to be part of a relationship. It helps if they're part of a relationship where humility is modeled, right, and is modeled in a courageous and strong way, right. We see
Yeah.
some examples of humility that are not. They're just they're just not real humility. They're some kind of artificial meekness that
Hmm.
is not what we're called to do. Anyway,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's. Is there anything else that you wanted to say about pride and humility?
No,
Okay.
no, except we right. Part of our recovery, part of what we needed to have to make it through. If you're struggling during this time of the year, then humility again is what's going to allow you to walk into the emergency room or into the hospital or into the metaphorical doctor's office. Um, and if you can't do that, then it's almost like the rest of what we're going to talk about today is almost nil because it's almost like the 12 steps. If I can't admit to step one, I can't do 2 through 12. So I'm glad you started with pride because that's where it's going to begin.
Yeah, yeah, and in fact, if oof, right, and if you skip step one, it it can create false expectations, false indicators of success, but there's
Mhm.
no real movement forward. It's it's just another
Correct.
illusion. It's just another way of manipulating the environment to prop up pride. Okay, so let's go on to the second one in our list. And what's the mnemonic that you use to remember the passions?
Pale gas.
Pale gas.
Pale gas.
It works. It works. So what's the A there in pale?
Okay. So the A is anger. And if I can go back a little bit, when we talk about in fact, I'm doing a presentation on this for Red Up Recovery. We do a nationwide Zoom conference, and I'm doing a training on it this Tuesday. But we talk about the camel or the straw that broke the camel's back. And if we're discussing how to make it through this time of year, we're going to flip that on its head. We're going to talk about taking the straws away. All right. There's not one thing we can do that's going to make us, if we're under stress, we're really hurting right now during this time of year because of all this going on. There's not one thing we do that's going to make it okay. All right. But if we do a bunch of little things, if we take this straw off, this straw away, then as we do those things, we're going to find the stress alleviating. And then as the stress alleviates, we're able to more enter into some of the proactive things we can do to make it this time of year. So again, just one thing isn't going to work. So that's why we're going to talk about a whole bunch of other things that one by one, we're taking those straws away from the poor camel. So anger is a killer, right? Anger is that thing that that ostracizes me from people, from myself, from God. If I actively express my anger, then I'm pushing human beings away, all right? Because no one wants to be around an angry person. If I'm internalizing it and not showing it and putting on a smiley face but not talking about or dealing with it, then that turns into depression because a lot of times depression is anger turned inward. Okay, so either way, if I'm holding on to this anger or allowing myself to get angry, then that's going to it's going to increase the stress and increase the problems at this time of year. It's also going to keep me from being able to do or from doing the things that take those little straws off the camel's back, so I can feel better and get well.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah. Sorry, I had to push some buttons. Right. So anger.
Go ahead, push a button.
Right. Yeah. Pushing buttons. That's yeah. Right. Uh, yeah. Anger. I I used to have this illusion that I didn't struggle with. I didn't have anger. Right. I'm pretty mellow, and you've known me for a while. I mean, I I don't get upset very easily. Right. And when I was going through my chaplain training, there's a lot of button pushing when you're going through chaplain training because they really want you to know yourself. And, I'd been intentionally Orthodox for a long time, intentionally Christian for a long time, looking for how I react to things, right? Anger wasn't even on my radar. I'm like, this is not one of the things. I'm not getting upset at things, right? I'm getting, challenged in these other ways that I'm working on. But the mentor in this process, she was like, no, you've got anger issues. I'm like, you don't know me, right? Well, then I'm like, okay, I got to, she's taken hundreds of people through this program. I should probably listen. And, that first step, like you were saying, yeah, pride. And so come to find out, yeah, I have, but I keep it really low, right? So the struggle is different, right? What does it look like, the anger? How does that play out? Both the expression of it and the keeping it down, worrying about it, that it's going to come out. How does that work for someone who's in the middle of an active struggle or actively affected by their addiction?
Okay. And again, we're going back to the idea that, okay, a couple things. One, for people who are active in their addiction, whether they're using now or they're about to use or they're thinking of using or they're setting themselves up to use, without going into a whole lot of neurophysiology, neurobiology, all the research now is showing that once someone steps over the line into what we call substance use disorder, or what we still do call addiction, addiction is a total hijacking and rewiring and rehardwiring of the brain caused by the use of certain mood-altering chemicals. And we're finding now that the neural pathways change, the neurotransmitters get all messed up and all out of whack. The receptor sites change. The brain chemistry changes, and there's some research that shows actually the brain structure changes as we enter into addiction. And the primary purpose of the brain, which again controls behavior, thoughts, reality, etc., the primary purpose of the brain and the neurotransmitters, neurotransmitter receptor sites, neuropathways, etc., becomes to perpetuate the addiction. So that using now becomes the normal, the natural lifestyle or life. All right. So the same way that, for you, eating is normal. If I suddenly say, well, you can't eat anymore, then to you, that's unnatural. Okay. So for an addict, the brain is basically constantly saying, feed me, feed me, feed me, feed me, feed me, perpetuate that addiction. So the addict is now learning to live in an unnatural fashion, alcohol and drug free. So that being said, anytime something raises the stress level or raises the level of uncomfortability, the brain's natural response is pick up, all right, pick up again, all right, use again, smoke again, hit again. Take some more. All right, that becomes the natural, the norm. So the addict, part of their lifestyle now is to learn to deal with and mitigate stress, problem areas, and so on. So if I'm angry and I'm not dealing with that anger causes release of certain chemicals, which causes the stress level to raise up, blood pressure to go up, a high degree of uncomfortability. And back here in the back of my mind is what I call the old screaming demon, who's always there. He's waiting. He is so patient. The addiction is so patient, all right? But he's waiting that opportunity to say, to heck with this, all right? Who needs, just pick up. One of those oxycodones that you have left over from your surgery, just one of those, and it'll help you for 2 hours and you'll be fine, all right? So it's still back there doing that. So again, if because of COVID or a present situation in America, if I can't go see my priest or I can't go to church and get the help I need from the hospital, if I can't go to an AA or NA meeting because they're all Zoom now because we can't meet in a room, then my stress level, that desire is going back up. And then again, that very, very patient, screaming demon, he's right back here waiting on me until that opportune time when I'm weak. And I'm weak because I can't reach out and get the love and the support, both mental, spiritual, and physical, that I need from those who love me and those I love.
Right. Right. So, going back to the straws on the camel's back, right? What are some ways of removing the straw? I don't know if the straw is anger, the things that precipitate anger, right? What can we do to keep that down during this holiday season?
Okay. In reference to anger specifically,
Yeah.
or the whole shebang?
No.
Anger,
Yeah. I want anger.
need. I can do what I can. Okay. I can do what I can do. All right. I can call you. All right. And of course, I'm personalizing it here because I don't want to say, you can do so and so. I can call you. I can talk to my wife. I can Zoom a meeting. I can call my friends. I can call, for people that I know who love me. And I can humble myself enough to say, hey, Reader Hayden, I'm struggling, dude. Just don't give me answers. Just listen to me for a few minutes, okay? Or I can call a friend up and say, listen, I'm hurting. I just need you to listen, okay? Or I've got to talk to somebody. Can we meet at the coffee shop? We'll both wear masks. I've got to get something. I can read my big book. I can read my scripture. I can listen to church services. There's things I could do that one thing's not going to fix it, but I can do a whole lot of little things that will help. Whereas maybe I could have gone to church, confessed to my priest, received the sacraments, I'll be okay. Maybe now I can't do that. So instead of that one big thing, I have to do 4 other little things. I've got to have a conference with somebody. I've got to call you. I've got to talk to my friends. I've got to read my big book, my Bible more. Those are things I can be doing. And everything that I do along that line gives me a feeling of, it takes away my powerlessness. It gives me a feeling I'm doing something as opposed to sitting in it and saying, well, there's nothing I can do. I can't go to a meeting. I can't go to church. I can't do anything. At least then I've got this feeling of I'm doing 5 things to help myself this week. So that helps.
Yeah, so it seems to me that in our normal lives, we have routines, if we're healthy, where those are built in. Opportunities for that are built in. So we don't have to be quite as intentional, right? And like if you see me, if my eyebrows are creased or something, you're going to notice, and this is part of your job as my subdeacon, you're going to say, go ahead, tell them what you say.
How you doing, Father?
And I say,
No, really.
I'm fine.
Really? I mean, really? How are you really doing?
And that's when the smile comes out and the conversation begins. And it's kind of built into our routine. And because we see each other, not as often as we'd like, because I'm only there every other weekend. But it's built in, right? And when we talk, you are sure to ask me that pretty much in every conversation. How are you doing? And if I blow you off, you're like, yeah, really? But in these times, those opportunities for kind of friend checking on friends, right? Family checking on family, they're not there. These normal kind of things that happen in a good society. So we have to be intentional about it, which means we kind of have to take ownership, right? There's this concept in military science where you set up indicators and warnings, right? That something bad might be about to happen. So you'll send out, maybe you'll establish a listening observation point at this place, so you can see if there's a recon patrol coming through. If there's a recon patrol coming through, you'll see it. You'll be able to signal back, hey, get ready. They're testing our defenses. They're probably getting ready for an attack. All that is to say, our system, we need to be set up with those kinds of warnings. Say, oh, look, I just kind of lost my temper at something that was just trivial. That's a warning, and it needs to trigger a behavior, calling a friend. going to a coffee shop, whatever it is. How how in control is someone? Is that a reasonable expectation that someone can be trained or learn how to do this when they're struggling with addictions?
Yes and no. Okay, it happens. It can happen later on in life, but I'll tell you an interesting story. Years and years ago, I was in a very, very dark, very bad place in my life, and because of my anger and my hurt and my cynicism, I decided for a year when people asked me how I was doing, I wouldn't answer them. I would divert it. All right. If you said, "Hey Bob, how you doing?" I'd say, "Man, how are you? I haven't seen you in a while." But I wouldn't answer them. All right. "Bob, how you doing?" "Good, man. I wouldn't lie to 'em. How about you? What's up with you?" Or I would ignore it. All right. In a year's time, no one called me on it. All right. And I determined when I came out of that dark, that I'd be very, very sensitive to people. All right. We also know, for instance, one of the things I teach to all the incoming staff at Red Oak Recovery is QPR, peer suicide prevention. And it's a peer prevention program. But one thing the research shows in suicidism, but also I think in other areas of life too, is that the only way you're going to know I'm not doing well is if in some way I'm dropping a hint. If I'm dropping a hint, I really want you to ask. Okay, so the idea of, Bob seems like he's down. I don't want to ask him if he's suicidal because I might make him suicidal is absolutely a myth. The only way you're going to know is if I'm dropping a hint. And if I'm dropping a hint, it's because in my heart I'm saying, please God, let this person question me deeper. And we find that when people are struggling, that if I say, "Father Anthony, how are you doing?" You say, I'm fine. Uh, if there's any hint, what you want me to do is say, "Really? I mean, you seem kind of tense. How are you doing?" So I encourage anybody who has friends they think are struggling, when they say, "How are you doing?" and the person says, "Oh, I'm fine," take it to another level. Go ahead and say, "Really? You kind of seem quiet today. What's up, man? Are you okay?" Because people really do want people who are afraid that maybe you don't care, or maybe you're too busy, or maybe you've got stuff of your own. They really do want you to say, "No, really, man, what's up? What's up?" So try it, and you may find people going, "Well, thank God you asked. Yeah, I'm really struggling today."
Excellent. Yeah, so we can help by building that into our routine. Yeah. And
Absolutely.
here's a funny thing. So it'll work even if it's kind of a joke between you, right? My wife and I figured this out, right? There are certain ways, like, if you go to counseling or something, you read Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. There's certain ways that you'll learn how to talk to somebody. And it's kind of funny, right? You're like, that never works. You can't parrot something back what they said and turn it into, a question to get them to talk. And so we turn
Yeah.
it into a joke, and it still works. It still works. It still works, even though it's turned into kind of this, thing between us, right? That so do it. Just do it.
Yeah.
So there are other, and you don't have to stick to this format if you don't want. If you want to go and talk about straws on the camel's back in a different way, that's fine too. But next one on the pale gas is lust. Now, lust, right? The dynamic of lust has changed a bit, right? And isolation has a peculiar effect on sexual temptation in the modern age, right? How does that work with temptation for despondency and temptation for addiction for addicts, people who are addicted?
Okay. For people who are addicted, I don't know about necessarily Orthodox Christians, but in the addicted world, lust will tend to carry itself out or find itself through inappropriate interactions with other people or inappropriate sexual interactions. All right, and at some point, if the person isn't careful, they find themselves again in the addicted world. Throwing COVID caution to the wind and seeking partners, seeking unhealthy partners. The problem with that is, of course, that ends up creating guilt or creating shame, either because you used someone, because we're figuring this, the person in recovery has a sense of excuse me, spirituality and morals and ethics, but because of the strong biophysiological desire, they find themselves acting out on it, and then either using someone or being used by someone, which then can create shame, guilt, which then causes the unnecessary, the overwhelming feelings of stress and hurt, and then they pick up and use. Um, so yeah, I don't have I don't know a whole lot along that line, except
So,
that
well, I've got a question
to
for you,
say
Ben,
that.
because you help run these facilities, right? And you run them based on you want to minimize risk, right? You want to
Right.
provide as many healthy interactions as you can, and keep these people from going into their heads in the wrong way, right? So, what about pornography? Is pornography allowed in a recovery?
No, no, it's not allowed in it's not allowed in the recovery programs, just for obvious reasons. All right. Um, as far as in when I say programs, I mean the inpatient on-site programs. You don't allow porn. Of course, we don't have TV or computer access, whatever, for our programs. As far as um, it kind of goes back and forth in the AA world, whereas using somebody else for your own sexual gratification is absolutely not okay. There are some different thoughts about sexual acting out and so on, whether it's with someone else or with yourself, or the use of pornography as a way of, if you're by yourself doing something, then you're probably not using somebody else directly. Of course, if you're utilizing pornography, you're in some way encouraging the exploitation of the person on the video or the magazine or whatever. But that's kind of probably
Yeah, and
another level of
and by the
subject.
way, so those of you who are listening, we're talking about this because we also work in the secular world, right? So there are different ways. I mean, pornography, it's unhealthy. It's missing the mark, right? So it does damage.
Right.
And it's been one of those interesting changes in our culture. So we were having this conversation 20 years ago, the dynamic of shame that you were talking about would have applied to porn use, right? People
Right.
who, in a moment of anger or weakness, whatever, might have pulled something on their computer. Next thing they're just completely fixated on it. And then afterwards they would have been ashamed. But now, the cultural shift seems to have been that we are now with pornography the way that we became with gambling 20 years ago,
Mm,
right? Whereas 50 years
mm,
ago, you would never talk about going to a casino at church, right? But it's pretty common in a lot of our parishes for people to talk about, oh yeah, I went to, so and so casino. It's become destigmatized, so there's not that rush of shame. Whether there should be or not is a different part, right? We're talking about the
sure.
psychological driver of addictive behavior and despondency, right? So that's what I was trying to get a sense of is where the professionals who are dealing with addiction are on how pornography plays into this cycle.
There's an old adage in at least in Narcotics Anonymous, I remember from years and years ago. But my sponsor used to talk about the four M's, which is meetings, McDonald's, movies, and masturbation. I guess I can say that word, right? But he said that's if you do that, go to meetings, go to movies, eat a lot of fast food or whatever, and then take care of that urge, then it'll keep you from getting out of trouble, especially the meetings part. From an Orthodox Christian standpoint, it's different, all right. And I mean, if I'm engaging in pornography, then I'm giving into some very sinful desires and thoughts and behaviors. So, from a secular standpoint, it's not viewed the same way as we, as Orthodox Christians, would view it. The same way that we would view premarital sex from a secular standpoint, very different than from an Orthodox standpoint. Either way, from Orthodoxy, it's a block. It's something. It's one more brick in that wall separating me from my Savior
Right? Yeah.
and from the power that comes from it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, good, good, good. Okay, so I don't know if we're going to get to all these. Now we've still got the E of envy. There's no envy during the holiday seasons, so we can just
Never,
skip this one, right?
no, not at all. No, and yes, and all I want is that 200 shot Red Ryder carbine BB gun, and I'll be happy. All right, if I could just get no way, kid. So yeah, envy is not just I want that, I want those things, and then I'm going to be disappointed if I don't have them. Envy is also, how come you can afford those things, or how come you can have that and I can't? So it's not just what I want. Envy also takes the form of me being angry at you because you can afford to do that and I can't, or your house looks better than mine, yeah. I mean, envy is pride. It's I'm not getting what I want, and I'm mad at you because you are. So yes, that's one more brick in that wall that as I give into it, especially this time of year when everything seems to focus on acquisition and attaining and getting. And I haven't owned a TV in 33 years, all right. But when Sue and I go to a hotel or something on a trip, we watch that box, and like every commercial is about give me, I want to attain this, and so on. So
Yeah, and this is what a good parent does for their children. This is how a good man takes care of his family, and all these expectations. And whether you're whatever you're however that's going to manifest itself, if you have these if you're living according to the expectations of the world, of course it's going to mess up your mind. Oh my goodness, we're going to get so wrapped around the axle, and whether that manifests as anger, as jealousy, as straight to despondency, right? And it's tough because these are, man, it's a hard time. The it's interesting. I've seen some studies on this where it's especially among people who can less afford it. This temptation to make up for the fact that we don't have the big house and stuff. So we're just going to have huge birthdays. We're going to have huge Christmases, right?
yeah,
And man, this is not a good time for that kind of dysfunction. It's
right.
just not. And but our kids see it all the time too, And so the idea, this wonderful idea. What do you do? How do you prepare? What's your big Advent ritual? Well, I'm going to write a list of things that I want for Christmas.
Right, right. I got this thing in the mail the other day from some mint or jewelry company, all right, addressed to me, okay, and it said something about earn points with your wife by buying this very expensive piece of jewelry. All right, earn points with my wife. I thought I'd do that by loving her and giving and being kind and sweet and praying with her and so on. I'm waving at her right now, and I mean, she looked at, she said, "That's crazy. That's stupid." So then I got all upset. I wanted to write, "Don't send me this anymore." But I didn't. All right, but their desire to create in me this jealousy or envy or whatever didn't do that, but it aroused my anger, and I wanted to like, "Oh, what's wrong with you?" So
Yeah.
either
Yeah,
way, they won. Satan won. So
just temporarily. So,
yes,
but talk about straws on a camel back. I mean, this is a whole bale, right? Right now, this is a
yeah,
whole bale of straw getting put on that camel's back. And so, you got to step outside it, right? And
mhm,
one of your solutions is, hey, we don't keep a TV in the house. We just don't keep a
yeah.
TV. Yeah, well, for those of us who there,
I love the
you've got to figure out rituals that keep you from focusing on stuff, you know.
Sure.
And it can be done. I mean, I'm so thankful that my kids, their happiness. I do not believe that their happiness depends on what we get them for Christmas, right? Do
Yeah.
they want stuff? Of course they do. There's new games coming out all the time, right? And there's planned obsolescence built into gaming consoles and computers. So there's always a desire for more things. But probably because of my wife, right? Certainly not because of me, but they don't have the expectation. There's not this addiction to stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So, but
It's
it,
also
mhm.
it's a neat way to witness for Christ and for the church when people naturally in their conversation say, "Well, what are you getting for Christmas?" or "What do you think you're getting? What are you asking for?" And we can, and again, in a humble, not pride-filled way, but in a loving, caring way, just say, that's really not the Orthodox way. That's not the emphasis. And I'll tell you that's one reason I'm Orthodox, because the emphasis really isn't on acquiring stuff. And again, we want to say it humbly and in a way that's not offensive or whatever. We can witness to the church by saying that's just not what we're into. And we love the services, and we love the extra prayer and fasting and those things that bring us closer to God. But the acquisition is just not really part of our church.
But
And I've had some really neat conversations with people. I've had, I mean, the response I usually get is, "Wow, I wish I could do that." And of course, the response is, "You can't. Come on, come
yeah,
and see. Come
and
and see."
this is a common thing that people will say about if they're on the old calendar that they really like about the old calendar is the separation. Now it's an artificial construct, right? But it's real. It exists. Those 13 days become that really intense part of Advent.
Yeah.
Nativity Lent. So maybe we don't look forward to all the stuff that shows up under the Christmas tree, but if you're honest, what's one of the things that you really look forward to on December 25th / January 7th? It's the brisket, right? Or the pulled pork or whatever it is. So
This is North Carolina, Father. All right. It's pulled pork. It's pork country. Brisket is Texas. That's way out
I
west. All
know.
right.
Yeah.
We do. You were just goading me, weren't you? No, we do pork, Boston butt, pork shoulder. Yeah, smoked 16 hours with my special secret sauce. Yeah, you're right.
And one of the reasons we enjoy that is because during the Advent, the Pilipivka, the Nativity Lent, did I get them all? We fast, right? We're called to fast, and that's because we recognize that gluttony. You see that segue there? Gluttony is one of our pale gases. So, gluttony, is this really an issue? Does this have an effect on despondency and addictive acting out?
I am so glad you asked, because maybe this time of year, right below pride is gluttony, and I want to explain why. There's a biophysiological reason. Okay, so in gluttony, of course, in our definition is excessive eating. What happens in the secular world, but also in the Orthodox world, since we're not eating animal products in the fast, we find ourselves eating more carbohydrates. And a lot of the carbohydrates that we eat are simple carbohydrates. Okay, you have the complex, which when it enters the body and is digested, it digests slowly. And the sugars, the glucose, enters the brain and the body slowly. And the body is able to mitigate it through the body, or the pancreas excreting insulin and so on. And you keep that sugar level fairly normal, fairly stable. There's a decent homeostasis. And if we're eating simple carbohydrates, cookies, cake, sugary stuff, and so on, not just at holiday parties, of which we have all kinds of, right? But also, like I said, if I'm not eating animal products, I am eating more pasta, more carbos, and so on. The whole homeostasis of the blood sugar goes up and down. We find that people with, not just people with diabetes or hypoglycemia or glucose intolerance or whatever, but like everybody will find themselves feeling kind of almost this bipolar up and down emotional roller coaster from eating all this stuff. All right, because the blood sugar goes up, which causes a hyperness. The body reacts by injecting insulin, which then causes this down. And the more simple carbs we eat, the greater the downer. Well, if I don't feel good, if I feel down, I'll eat one more Christmas cookie, all right, two, maybe four or five more Christmas cookies, which then shoots that blood sugar level up again, and then which causes the body to release insulin, which then lowers it not back to homeostasis, but way below. And I find myself again almost this bipolar feeling every day. Okay, well, when the body is in that lack of homeostasis, it affects my emotions greatly. Okay, so my emotions are affected. I go back and forth from depression to excitement, and I'm doing this during the time of the fast, which causes again emotional disharmony. And then when I feel emotionally disharmonized as an addict, I know how to fix it. As a not addict, I also know how to fix it. Right? I just don't feel good. All right, I isolate. I get angry. People who have this up and down sugar thing, they get angry easily, they get irritated easily, they snap at other people easily. So yeah, I mean, so the gluttony thing isn't just I'm eating more and I'm getting fat. It's this whole blood sugar glucose thing that causes emotional responses.
Yeah, yeah. And for Orthodox, there's this interesting thing that happens that plays in with the pride and the despondency through shame, right? Because we are called to fast, but we have so many opportunities not to, and sometimes hospitality. The expectation is that we do break the fast, right? And people, if they have an unhealthy relationship with food or with fasting, then the blood sugar isn't the only thing going up and down. It's the security in Christ. It's the self-esteem, right? Which none of those should be dependent on your fasting and what you're eating. What about avarice?
Avarice, avarice is like me just not liking you or being mad at you or wishing ill for you. Is that? Tell me your definition of avarice. How you would view avarice. Are you looking it up?
Yeah, my buttons aren't working there. Yeah, so let's ask.
Okay.
Hey Google.
Wishing ill will on someone. You're looking it up, aren't you?
I am, of course I am. I have no brain of my own. But you know what? The Google is very slow. An immoderate desire for wealth. And here,
Good is very slow.
I love it when they explain a
Okay,
word with a
good.
word that we don't know. Cupidity. So there you go.
Gotcha.
It's
Gotcha. That's beautiful.
cupidity.
Good. The desire for lots of wealth.
Yeah,
Okay.
consumerism, right? This is, we talked about some of this with envy, right? But just the desire for accumulation and the unmet desire for accumulation, right? And we talked about this, and people are familiar with it because we just had that wonderful gospel lesson about the man who, built barns that could store his leftover grain, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, avarice is tough also when you are unemployed.
Yeah.
When you're living on the street, I can't imagine avarice. That's an unmet, unrealistic expectation.
Yes and no. All right. It's interesting. We know that, for instance, among the homeless population or the extreme struggling population, the issue isn't getting what you want; it's keeping what you have. That's why Sue works at the local rescue mission here, the Christian Rescue Mission, and one of the things that they deal with, even among the homeless population, is the acquisition of stuff. Now, when you and I say avarice, we might be saying, I want, tens of thousands of dollars or whatever in my bank account. I won't be happy until I get it. I'm going to acquire as much as I can to get that big bank account. Among that population, it's like, well, I need 4 winter coats. And the idea of, one's not enough. I've got to have 17 pairs of socks. I need, 13 pairs of shoes. The person you and I were talking about earlier from your phone call yesterday is a shoe acquirer. She, at her highest level, will have 15 or 20 pairs of shoes. But it's still the same. It's that thing I've got to acquire, and part of that is the lack of the belief that God is going to take care of me. So I've got to have excess because in my heart I really don't think that when it comes down to it that God's going to take care of my needs. With food and clothing, Jesus said, "Be satisfied." So
Yeah, and
of course the flip side. Go ahead.
yeah, and I was kind of dark humor there, right? So for those of us who are comfortably, employed and all this kind of stuff, avarice takes on one form, and it's not pretty. But for people who are living right there on the edge, it is so much more obvious. The desire to hold on to whatever it is that you have and just acquire more, right? And it's what we're seeing there is a mirror of ourselves. Look, that's and I've got to let it go, like you said. I've got to trust God. I got to trust God. I don't need that. But man, for some of us, that Amazon can become an addiction for us, right? Because there's so many things that I didn't know I needed it until I saw it. But man, it's going to make me so much happier if I get it, right? That's cupidity.
The flip side to avarice is that when I see an actual bona fide need, especially someone who's in our church who doesn't have food, doesn't have clothing, doesn't have enough money to pay the electric bill or something, all right, the giving heart will say, well, of course I'll write a check, or of course, here, take this. Avarice says, no, I'm not going to help you because, and then the tendency then to find fault in them. Like, well, I'm not going to give you money for your electric bill because I know 2 weeks ago you went to Taco Bell and you spent money at Taco Bell. So if you're going to waste your money, then why am I going to help you? So now not only am I guilty of avarice, I'm guilty of judging them because they went to Taco Bell. That's my way of saying, well, I'm going to hold on to my wealth and my riches. And then I'm gonna justify why I'm not helping a brother or a sister in Christ or someone who really needs it. Avarice not only affects me, it keeps me from helping others who really, really need the love and the extra material things.
Yeah. And as with every sinful behavior, the more books we read and the more orthodox we become, the better we're able to justify that kind of behavior. Right? It's just so, it can be really sick. I can excuse any kind of controlling behavior now because I've read so many books. Right? Yeah, terrible. Okay, the last one, and of our gas is sloth, the demon of noonday. Right? Christmas season, we're very busy. We're very busy, but a lot of our normal Christmas routines are broken. Yeah, so the demon of noonday often comes when we're sitting down and we're alone with our thoughts. What does this demon of noonday with sloth, sometimes called laziness, what does that look like for someone who is in addiction?
What's interesting is that, when we think of sloth, we often think of laziness, like someone who's just kind of a slacker or whatever. That's really not the meaning. Acedia, which is the Greek, is kind of this halfway point between normal and depression. And it's this feeling of, I just don't feel it. I don't feel good. It's not always the demon of noonday, which is a transient thing that happens possibly because I had a high carbohydrate lunch and now I've got that sugar thing I was talking about earlier. All right, and if you're interested, chart yourself. All right, and notice what you eat, and then how 30 to 45 minutes after you eat lunch, if you eat carbohydrates, you begin to feel like whatever. But acedia can also be this protracted thing that lasts for weeks at a time. It's just this feeling of I can't get the energy to do what I need to do. Um, it's almost like my metaphor of I can lose weight if I get up and exercise, and I'll have more energy. But if I don't have the energy to get up and exercise, then I'm not going to get the energy to lose weight. I just can't bring myself to do it. That's in some cases that's acedia, and acedia can be dealt with through everything we've talked about so far. Making those phone calls, going to church when you can, calling your priest, confessing the sin of acedia. Father, I just can't bring myself to do these things. Asking for help from other people, which then takes humility, which gets rid of the pride. Not eating high carbohydrates, which then we talked about earlier, gluttony. But there also may come a time when I need professional help. All right. And if I'm entering into the holiday season and I've done all those other things that we talked about, and I just can't bring myself to get out of this funk, then at some point, I need to not be ashamed of the fact that I simply can't do this by myself. At that point, I need to step out. And although I have a wonderful priest and I have some really good friends, sometimes I need professional help. A lot of my friends are EMTs and nurses, but sometimes I've got to go to a doctor. I've got to go to a higher level of care. And if I just can't bring myself out of this acedia, then I'm going to seek a higher level of care. I'm not going to feel ashamed that I did it.
Right.
It's my
And I
local
think
mental health center.
one of the things I appreciate in our lifetime has been the way that that's being destigmatized. Right? It's been intentional, and I think it's working. I really do think it's working.
Yep.
The kids that I'm in school with, I mean, they're in their 20s, right? They feel like kids to me because I'm so much older than them. It's not. It is something that they talk about. It's just part of their normal conversation, like they would talk about going to the doctor for something else. And yeah, that's pretty healthy. And we can go about how that can affect our culture in different ways. But so what is the warning sign that I'm in that? How long should I wait? What's the tripwire?
Okay. There's a couple tripwires. One is if I've tried, I can honestly say that I've tried to get out of it, and I've done the things we've talked about. I've looked at my diet. I've tried exercise. I've tried going to meetings. I've tried all this stuff that we've done, and I'm just not feeling better. And then also I'm talking to my friends. I'm talking to people who love me. All right. When they start saying stuff like, you may need to seek some outside help. Okay. I know that in my own recovery, but also my own spirituality, that when the people who love me begin all saying the same thing, Bob, you may want to look into that. All right. What's going on? I need to sit up and listen. So when the people who you're honest with, who love you and care about you, begin asking, are you okay? Do we need to get you some help? So that's one. The other is if I start having thoughts of suicide or thoughts of giving up, thoughts of to heck with this orthodoxy, to heck with God. They're not helping me. The church doesn't help me. I don't need that stuff. When I find myself doing those things, it's almost a natural response to reject the very things that are helping me. And that's kind of our brain's way of saying, our brain's way of showing that we're starting to give up. All right. What people who've gone to AA and NA for years and worked a good program, if they begin to enter into relapse, we'll find them saying, I hate AA. AA is stupid. They don't do anything for me. NA is dumb. I want to use when I go to those meetings, even though for the last 4 years they've helped me a whole lot. When I start seeing that, that's an indicator to me that I need to step this thing up and maybe get a higher level of care. Or when my priest says, listen, we talked about this, we've done all we can do. Why don't you seek a higher level of care? Then that's when I'm going to seek a higher level of care.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Yeah, so, let's foster relationships of, care with people so that we can be part of that conversation and we have others who are going to watch for us, right? It happens naturally in a healthy community, but maybe we need to be a little bit more intentional about it. This is what both our bishops, Metropolitan Antony and Archbishop Daniel, and also the bishop I serve under at the Antiochian Church here, His Grace Bishop Nicholas, have encouraged us to do. They said, look, your people are suffering and they don't have the people looking out for them the way they used to. You need to go out of your way to make sure you do that. And not just priests. We all have to do this. And I really appreciate how you do that, just as a matter of course. Just as a matter of course, checking on people. And those of you who are listening, do that. As part of your Ukrainian Orthodox League or whatever, just reach out to people. It may seem, in normal times it's weird to get a phone call out of the blue, right? You're like, yeah, what's this all about? It's not so weird right now. It's kind of nice, right? Well, Subdeacon John Bob, I appreciate this. I appreciate your expertise and sharing some time on this Saturday morning. I hope you get out there and enjoy some of the nature there in the Appalachian Mountains of Western North Carolina.
Thank you, Father. We're going to go over the mountain and get what I talked to you about yesterday. So
fantastic! Oh, that's wonderful, and we'll be talking about that before too long.
Woot, woot.
All right. Well, until next time, everybody.
Thank you, Father.
Yeah. Where's my
hug the family?
You too. Godspeed.